Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm TX141, but you may call me Paul, welcoming you to another pair of Ace in a Day gameplays for the arcade mode of War Thunder. In today's episode we shall be reviewing the newly introduced as of patch 1.53 German fighter aircraft of Tier 2 and battle rating 2.7, known as the Bayerische Flugzeugwerken 900 MLV, or in English the Bf-109 E-4. To provide you all with a brief historical overview to the E-4, we must realise that with the Bf-109 E-3 being the principal fighter of the German Luftwaffe during the Battle of France from May to June of 1940, the E-4 would be introduced on the verge of the Battle of Britain at the start of July 1940. In essence, it was an upgrade on the E-3, differing as follows. It saw the standardisation of the armament layout of two 7.92mm MG17 machine guns with 1,000 rounds per gun as based in the engine cowling, and two 20mm cannon with 60 rounds per gun, one to each wing. The single 20mm MG FFM motor cannon was scrapped entirely due to the large vibrations it caused when fired. The 20mm MG FF cannon of the E-3 were replaced with the modified and newly introduced 20mm MG FFM cannon. This cannon could fire a high capacity, high explosive shell known as the Minengeschoss round. These Minengeschoss rounds were also lighter and generated less recoil than the previous rounds fired in the MG FF cannon. Compared to the MG FF then, the MG FFM cannon had a fire rate of 540 rounds per minute versus 520 rounds per minute, and a muzzle velocity of 700 meters per second versus 600 meters per second. The cockpit was also refined to a squared off design to increase the pilot's visibility, and this design would stay with the Bf-109 in general until the arrival of the G variant in the latter half of 1942. Unlike the E-3 however, the plane was powered by the same Daimler-Benz DB601 AA 1175 horsepower liquid-cooled inline engine. As well as the standard E-4 fighter, there are a number of sub-variants, including the E-4/B, a fighter bomber able to carry one 250kg bomb or four 50kg bombs, the E-4/N, which was a high-altitude sub-variant with the Daimler-Benz DB601 N 1200 horsepower engine, and then there was the Bf-109 E-4/BN, which was another fighter bomber sub-variant but with the high-altitude engine, and only a limited number of the high-altitude sub-variants were produced due to the priority given to supply the Daimler-Benz DB601N engine to the Bf-110 production lines. In total, 561 E-4s were constructed, with 250 of them being straight E-4 fighters, 211 E-4/B fighter bombers, 15 E-4/N high-altitude fighters, and 20 E-4/BN high-altitude fighter bombers. The other 65 aircraft were converted E-3 fighters. The E-4 was to primarily see service in the Battle of Britain, being regarded as the equal of the Spitfires then in service, and only being phased out at the end of August 1940 with the arrival of the E-7 sub-variant. The plane would also go on to see a limited period of service in North Africa from the spring of 1941 as a tropicalised Bf-109 E-4 Trop variant. And with our historical overview concluded, let us see how the Bf-109 E-4 handles in War Thunder. For today's first game, we're on the assault map approaches to Moscow using the following setup. Omni-Purpose belts for our machine guns, the reasoning being that whilst we do not expect to do the maximum amount of damage of our machine guns by comparison with our 20mm cannon, we want to be able to do some damage when our cannon are exhausted, but at the same time help to range in our cannon when they are available. To this end, the Omni-Purpose belts work very well, with the armour-piercing tracer rounds providing the visibility and the range-finding tactic, and at the same time the combination of adjustment incendiary and armour-piercing incendiary rounds providing the damage output when required. For our 20mm cannon then, we're using the air target belts, as these comprise the majority of high explosive incendiary Minengeschoss rounds, which are absolutely brutal against any foe we see in the sky. On top of this, we also have a small contingent of fragmentation incendiary tracer rounds, which A are very effective against enemy bomber pilots, and B have a tracer, which means we can see where these rounds are going and therefore help to range in even further our 20mm cannon rounds. With only 60 rounds per gun, we need to make sure every round counts. To this end, we are employing a 300 meter gun convergence as well, as we have a limited fire rate of 540 rounds per minute and we want to make sure every round counts and is placed accurately on the foe. For our fuel load, we are using the standardised 30-minute fuel load to make it to the end of the game unscathed in terms of fuel capacity, and we kickstart this game with a head-to-head engagement with Ki-44-1, which is slightly interrupted by the presence of a Heinkel HE-112B who is stalling out in front of us as we come around, and we dispatch them for kill number 1. We then see the Ki-44-1 gradually coming around to chase us, and we decide to go head-to-head. We're yak one off in the distance, and we do not want to turn this into a 2 versus 1. As we go head-to-head, we do not hit the target, but instead we both engage in a rolling scissors, going into the horizontal and vertical where required. The two planes are very similar in terms of their manoeuvrability, both losing manoeuvrability at lower speeds. The Ki-44 at a speed of 275 km/h approximately to our 260 km/h, and this means gradually we gain the upper hand, as while both planes share a very powerful rudder and very good roll rate. The Ki-44 has a weaker elevator response, rather than the good elevator response of the E-4, and this means we gain the upper hand, come around and strike the Ki-44-1 for a couple hits in the tail, which will cause them to saunter in the ground for kill number 2 eventually. With our 20mm cannon exhausted, we break back up and see the Yakovlev Yak-1 above us, although we are not aware of the fact there is a Messerschmitt 109 getting ready to pounce on us, if it were not for the fact a friendly XP-38G Lightning has broken down on them. See, even the professionals of observational awareness get it wrong every so often. And with the Yak-1 gradually pursuing our friendly XP-38G, we begin to pursue, but they are now aware of our presence and go into a steeper dive, which we will not be able to catch them in for the time being. We stay up then, make sure our guns are reloaded with our 20mm cannon back in action, and survey the scenario. All of the opposition is down low now, and we need to wait for our next chance in order to strike a foe. And we have a very strong feeling the Yakovlev Yak-1 is going to use a zoom climb very shortly after their pass in order to try and come back up and secure the higher altitude regions, but we will not let them. At this point we can see as they put themselves out as a clean target for us, we open fire at 600 metres, with our rounds gradually striking at 400 metres and cutting the foe to pieces. This shows the limitations of using our 300 metre gun convergence, as we have a significant amount of spray, but this does mean against smaller foes, i.e. not bombers, we will not be able to do as much damage until we get towards our gun convergence or aim off centre. With 3 kills in the bag now, we level out once again. And we can see as we level out the straight line acceleration of the E-4 is very powerful, from its stall speed of approximately 160 km/h all the way up to 350 km/h. Beyond this, its acceleration begins to depreciate, but is still felt rather nicely up to 450 km/h and then begins to fall away quite noticeably. Going up to higher altitudes, i.e. in excess of 6,000 metres, you'll find the plane begins to lose its performance. But for its battle rating and tier combination of arcade, altitudes above 5,000 metres are not very common, which means that this plane is in a sweet spot for its overall setup. We go into a boom and zoom dive here and show off the fact that this plane does not handle very well in the higher speed boom and zoom passes, especially over 700 km/h, as we try to get a shot on the CR-42 and only achieve a critical on their tail controls. The CR-42 will continue to fly around for a little bit and eventually be shot down by a friendly for what will be our first and only assist of this game if I remember correctly. As we break away and begin to drop off some of our speed then, we should consider that at 600 km/h in a dive, the E-4 begins to suffer a roll rate lockup and a controllability lockup in general, especially with regards to the elevator. This means that as you hit 700 km/h, your roll rate is approximately only 10% of what it originally was, and your elevator becomes very stiff, making it very difficult to track targets in a boom and zoom pass, even in the more linear ones, as demonstrated against the CR-42, and this means that boom and zoom passes have to be enacted over the shorter sprint distances rather than the longer distances that you may entertain in other aircraft, such as the early LA-5s, although they do suffer a roll rate lockup as well. At this point, having noticed the enemy light bomber, I believe it was a Blenheim, being shot down by a friendly Gladiator, and having picked up our assist on the CR-42, we break upwards to try and get a little bit more altitude. And we can see here, much like at the start of the game, how the climb rate of the E-4 is very powerful, and you'll be one of the first planes at your battle rating and tier combination to penetrate an altitude in excess of 4,000 metres. And we do a little wiggle here to show how powerful the roll rate is and the controllability of the plane in general is at its lower speeds, i.e. the ideal speeds that this plane likes to be at in between 350 and 500 km/h, but especially there is a sweet spot at 400 km/h as demonstrated there. We look up and see an SBD-3 Dauntless flying up very high, and we personally feel that the SBD-3 will have to dive down to attack the bases, as it is a dive bomber, and that is where we will catch them if we decide to go after them. At this point we decide to go into a split test against a P-40 Kitty Hawk, gradually trying to make a gentler angle climb to avoid the fact we're coming down rather fast. And this is to prevent us going over 700 km an hour, as the P-40 is rather oblivious to our presence and catches fire thanks to our 20mm cannon fire. With kill number 4 in the bag, we can see by taking a more gradual approach and even cutting our throttle, we're able to cut away on the Kitty Hawk and at the same time brake back up and change direction to avoid any fire from the Heinkel 112B that may have pursued us otherwise. We're gradually pulling away thanks to our engine power, and we see the Dauntless diving down as expected, and at this point we will proceed over to try and intercept if possible. At the same time as we level out, we see a friendly Messerschmitt 19 also going for the SBD-3, and we may opt to break off if we think the Messerschmitt 19 is going to cut the Dauntless apart rather quickly. And it would seem the Dauntless is aware of our friendly's presence as they break away off into the distance and cause it to be a linear pursuit. At this point then we use an Immelmann to turn around and gain a little bit more altitude, and again demonstrate the acceleration of the Messerschmitt 19 E-4 in a straight line, whether it be at lower altitudes, i.e. below 2,000 metres altitude, all the way up to the altitude seen in this plane ideally faces at approximately 6,000 metres, although you can go up to 7,500 metres, although you're pushing it a little bit. In terms of recommended altitude range then, it would be ideal to keep this plane in an altitude range of 3,000 to 5,000 metres altitude, as this is where the engine works to its greatest strengths, and at the same time you'll be able to dominate the higher altitude regions of the sky for your tier and battle rating setup. And once up at these altitude regions, a lot of your foes such as the Yakovlev Yak-1 or even the Ki-44 to some extent at the lower portion of this, i.e. 3,000 metres, will not be able to compete as easily, as their engines are not always optimised for these altitude positions. We can see an enemy Messerschmitt 19 climbing up to higher altitudes, potentially to face us, and we are going to entertain this by going into a reload before the engagement. We've called the reload a little bit too close, but we intend not to kill them in the opening pass, but instead open fire having made a turn. The Messerschmitt 19 ML4 here opens fire a little bit too early, and we can see the rounds breaking up in front of us. They tried to cut underneath us, but instead cut themselves right in front of our fire. Unfortunately we opened fire too close, within a distance of 200 metres, which causes a lot of our 20mm cannon ammunition to miss, and as we come around on our rudder, we cut them apart for what is our ace in a day. As we begin to saunter around once again, we notice that the high altitude threats have been eliminated, and the only other foes potentially coming upwards are Hurricanes potentially chasing after our SM-79 in the distance, although this is just going to be a distant dream. As the ground targets begin to trickle away, we stay level and continue our overall combat air patrol. Now snapping down towards an enemy Nimrod, but the last ground unit is killed and the mission is accomplished. And with that, it is time to take a look at the post-game stats. With our ace in a day and single assist, we're able to pick up 17,950 silver lions and 2,369 research points. This first game then has been a valid demonstration of the all-rounder nature of the E-4. With its great overall manoeuvrability that comes with the caveat of keeping your speed above 260 km an hour, otherwise the elevator will become heavy and the other control surfaces will follow suit, this plane will be able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of the Ki-44-1 and the Yakovlev Yak-1 in the first instance, with its great overall roll rate, powerful rudder and decent elevator response. On the opposite end in the boom and zoom pass, we have noted that the E-4 suffers above 600 km an hour, experiencing a rapid roll rate lockup and elevator lockup when it passes 700 km an hour, and this means that the plane in high speed boom and zoom passes is a no-go. But instead you have to take more gentle approaches and try to control your speed where appropriate, as demonstrated in the pass against the P-40 Kitty Hawk. And in doing so, you'll be able to control the skies around you for your tier and battle rating quite nicely, as this plane has one of the higher climb rates of its tier and battle rating combination, enabling it to get to altitudes in excess of 4,000 metres well before the majority of your opposition. And as we can see on the stat screen here, we came third by comparison to the rest of our team, and if there had been a noticeable bomber threat on the enemy team, we could have even scored higher, but unfortunately it was not to be, and we did not get to flex the muscle that our two 20mm MG-FFM cannons provide. But now in our second game, we definitely will. For our second and final game of today, we're on the ground strike map Spain using the same setup as before, but this time we're in a Tier 3 battle rating 3.0 minimum match. This is to contextualise the E-4 review in the wider context of the tougher opposition it may face. We will begin with the same climbing strategy as in the first game, push above 4,000 metres altitude and then level out and utilise the rather powerful engine of this plane to build up our speed above 350 km an hour and reconsolidate our kinetic energy position. We will see in front of us a friendly Messerschmitt 19 F4 gradually outclimbing us, but the distances in terms of the climb rates of these two planes are not as severe as one may expect. We can see that as the F4 proceeds up to 3,500 metres altitude before levelling out, we are only approximately an altitude gap of 250 metres behind, and if you were to take the F4 up to approximately 5,000 metres altitude, we would only be 700 metres or so behind, which means that the plane, i.e. the E-4, is still within touching distance of the climb rates of its tougher opponents, and the likes of the Spitfire Mark 5B and 109 F4, or indeed the F1 and F2, will have to be aware of the fact that an E-4 pilot who side climbs at the start may be above them in the later course of the game, and this all requires patience in the long haul. As we level out then and use our great straight line acceleration to rebuild our speed, as already mentioned, we will see that the majority of the enemy team are flying below us and have opted to go down to lower altitudes. This is an irritation from the first game, and it will mean for now we will not be able to strike any enemy fighters or bombers. We are just going to act as surveillance and gradually provide the space for our friendly B-25 and PE-8 to bomb out the bases and the enemy airfield if needs be. As we continue to look around, knowing that we made the mistake in the first game on observational awareness, we gradually break around, and we can see that the plane does not bleed too much speed in an exacerbated turn. It bleeds about the same amount of speed again as the comparison aircraft for this plane, the Yakovlev Yak-1. As we level out, we see the PE-8 gradually making its way to other bases, and we just stay suit, making sure that no enemy fighters will be able to engage them. It is rather tedious, but we can see how the E-4, once up at higher altitudes, can hold its position very nicely and act as that bomber escort if needs be. We also see our friendly F4 from earlier doing the same, and at this point we see an enemy P400 right underneath us, just a little bit too far away, and if we happen to dive after them, we will encounter the same issues as before in terms of our roll rate locking up. Nonetheless, we are going to go into an extrapolated dive here, as we are getting rather impatient of the fact no enemy aircraft are up high, and we can see a swarm of enemy aircraft all climbing to face one of our enemy fighters, but we have pushed above the 700 km an hour mark and our roll rate has been restricted. Rather than try to go for a double or triple kill here, we opt to go for the P39N0 on the end of the enemy formation to pick them off with a quick burst. We will now brake upwards, bleeding off a little bit of speed at first, and then use a G overload to gradually consolidate our position and open up on an F2A-3 Buffalo. We achieve a critical hit and rip off their left wing flaps, and we carry our momentum through here to strike an LA-5F. We pick up our speed once again, but we get in nicer close and achieve a critical hit, setting them on fire in the oil tank and fuel tank, and then breaking through to attack a P-51 Mustang who just happens to cut across our path. Here the P-51 is flying in a straight line, and it means rather than worry about our restricted roll rate, we can just come down directly on top of them. And as rank does not matter, as seen on the top of the screen just then, the LA-5F is gradually burning away with their fuselage being cut to pieces, and that is already 3 kills in the bag in a brief burst of violence. We go for a reload with 23 rounds left. We probably could have picked up another kill if we wanted to, and we should feel unfortunate that we did not get the Buffalo, but again convergence matters, and the low fire rate of our 20mm cannon means that we will not always get the results we desire. We break up here and we can see that our energy retention coming out of a boom and zoom pass is rather nice. We gradually lose speed, but at the same time in a gentle climb angle we can always switch the war emergency power on and keep our speed topped up to approximately 330 km an hour, and this is with the standardised 20 to 25 degree climb angle that I personally try to use in arcade. As we level out then and build up our speed once again, we can see that our acceleration at lower altitudes is preferable by comparison with our acceleration up at the higher altitudes, up to say 450 km an hour, and this is below 2,000 meters altitude, ideally. But at the same time, a number of opponents at lower altitudes will be able to outrun you and outperform you in general, and whilst the list would be constricted typically to the Yakovlev Yak-1, this also extends at the higher battle ratings to the P-39 Aerocobras in particular, and this does mean that you are rather vulnerable when you're at lower altitudes, especially when you are coming away from the furball and looking for any potential pursuers that may be looking for your blood. We see a lag-free being ripped apart by our friendly B-25J, who does not like the fact they have been harassed by the lag-free, and we break upwards once again. We can see how in short boom and zoom passes, or sprints, we are able to change our direction continuously, and we see an LA-5 in the distance that is smoking and going after our friendly PE-8. We wish to intercept, and whilst the distance is rather great, we will get there just in time, or at least we feel. The LA-5 is smoking and seems to be unaware of our encroaching presence, and we wish to cut in on them. But at the same time, because of our convergence setting of 300 meters, we do need to get close, otherwise we'll be wasting our ammunition. We open fire with our machine guns to get some hits to range in, and then try to get some shots on target, although the LA-5FM pilot is being rather elusive here, and we are waiting for them to level out to take some shots at the PE-8 instead. We open fire with a second burst, and we put in our third burst and cut off their right wingtip, picking up kill number 4. At this point we can see our friendly E-4 breaking upwards, most likely in reaction to a number of enemy fighters gradually coming out of the spawn and trying to climb to altitude to attack our friendly AR-2 and PE-8, and we break up as well, as our speed was in excess of 500 km an hour chasing the LA-5FN, and we can afford to go up a little bit and build up a position once again. The PE-8 unfortunately gets set on fire here by the P400, but we will get revenge. We close in and cut them apart for another kill. We then break onto the Spitfire that is climbing up towards the PE-8 and picked up our ace in a day. The Spitfire tries to go head to head, but we cut down on top of them with our limited elevator response and pick up kill number 6. At this point we can see a number of enemy fighters, an I-185, a P-40 still burning, and a Messerschmitt 109 all climbing up to try and attack our friendly bombers, i.e. the PE-8 with its massive bomb load of 5 tons. We have just taken a reload and we will now begin to break back around in order to engage by the usage of an Immelmann. Again we can see how, despite the fact we bleed off our speed rather rapidly, we can build it back up just as quickly, and an enemy B-25 Mitchell has just spawned in. We may get that bomber kill we have craved since the start of this match. But in the meantime we have to focus on the enemy fighters coming up, and we can see here how a judged boom and zoom strategy over shorter distances means that the E-4 can be used in the energy fighter role. It is not restricted to using its manoeuvrability to outmaneuver its foes, or defeat them we should really say. With our 7th kill in the bag, picking off another Messerschmitt 109, we snap around to take out another Messerschmitt 109, this time an F, and then we come onto the back of an I-185 who tries to split us in front of us and pick up the triple kill. We can see we've still got 52 cannon rounds left, and we really didn't need to use all of our ammunition to pick up 3 kills. We've still got the capacity if we want to pick up at least 1 more kill, not necessarily on an enemy bomber. And at this point we direct our path away from the B-25, who unfortunately becomes aware of our presence too soon, and it means that we go for the reload and cannot kill the bomber in time. But still we have 9 kills in the bag, and we climb once again. The only foe left standing up at higher altitudes it would seem is an I-16. And this is where we're going to come around and utilise our moderate stall speed against the I-16 and our powerful climb rate to the greatest effect possible. We are aware the I-16 is most likely trying to pursue the AR-2 in the first instance, but as we get closer the I-16 will probably turn their attentions towards us. Going head to head is dangerous because if it is an I-16 Type 27 or Type 28, they will have 2 20mm cannons and 2 7.62mm machine guns in the same or roughly the same configuration as our own fighter, and it will be a test of convergence which we do not want to go into. So straight away at the longer distances we are using our climb rate, which is superior to theirs in the long haul, in order to make sure we have the altitude advantage, and then we can use our acceleration to build up our speed once again in preparation for another rapid climb. At this point our friendly AR-2 seems to have used a split S in order to try and get away from the I-16, or at least bring them back towards us, which is ideal, and in fact the AR-2 has broken away and the I-16 has now turned towards us. At this point we try to swoop down via boom and zoom pass, taking a gradual angle rather than a steep one. We open fire but aim a little bit too high, and the I-16's manoeuvrability means that it can cut just underneath our firing path. Again we were pushing above 600 km an hour and our manoeuvrability was compromised. So instead here we are going to break over the top of the I-16 and gradually force them to stall out as we begin to stall out. As whilst the I-16 does have the lower stall speed, i.e. below 140 km an hour, we have the ability to stay above them just a little bit longer than they may expect, and as they stall out we swoop down, get them within convergence dead on 300 metres and cut them to pieces for what is our double ace and our final kill of this match. And as we can see in the distance, an enemy blowing them up high, gradually assaulting our friendly Wellington. And as we try to break up to pursue the Blenheim here, we just cannot catch them in time. And one of the limitations potentially of the E-4 is its top speed, which is only just over 600 km an hour. This means that the plane in general will not be able to catch the foes who are already trying to outrun it, i.e. those already committed to a dive, by comparison with some of the higher battle rating opposition that you can face, such as the P-39 Aerocobra or the Focke-Wulf 190A1. Planes that will be able to catch those foes who are already trying to make a break for it. And as we can see, the final ground unit's been knocked out, the game ends, and it's time for us to take a look at the post-game stats. While 10 kills and single assist were able to pick up 54,020 silver lions and 3,706 research points. In order to defeat the E-4 then, one needs to exploit one of its two core weaknesses. The first being its poor manoeuvrability, especially with regards to its elevator control, below a speed of 260 km an hour, and planes such as the P-36 Hawks will have a field day at these lower speeds. The alternative is to exploit its vulnerability to head-on passes, as its lethal 20mm cannon are based in the wing and therefore convergence reliant. Planes such as the Bf-109F1 in particular will have a field day here, with their nose-mounted machine gun and cannon armament being able to cut the E-4 down at longer ranges well before they can get within the convergence range of the E-4 if the pilot is using a similar convergence as we have today. By opening fire at a distance of a kilometre and snap rolling out of the way when you feel it is appropriate, you'll gradually be able to goad the E-4 into a more frustrated scenario and gradually bring them down through successive head-on passes. And we should conclude on a comparison with the Bf-109F1, as we found a couple of years ago the F1 was a game changer by comparison with the E3, with the evolution from two 20mm MG-FF cannon to a single nose-mounted, firing through the propeller hub, 20mm MG-FFM cannon, which we found was more powerful and complemented the more powerful Daimler-Benz engine in the F1, which turned it from an all-rounder, i.e. in the E3, to more of an energy fighter based around vertical manoeuvrability. But now that the E4 is here, we have found that by keeping the same flight model essentially as the E3, but switching the two 20mm MG-FF cannon out for FFM cannon, we have much more firepower at our disposal, and we do not always need that preference of vertical manoeuvrability to be successful, as we see here by coming second by comparison to the rest of our team. And it does have to make you wonder the question, the smallest tweaks, do they make the greatest difference? And so that's all I've got time for today, ladies and gentlemen, and I have been TX141. If you have enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future War Thunder videos on my channel. But until next time, take care, and good luck in the skies!